away their will to resist. They immediately understood that these mysterious outside powers would be fatal to their own universe. On the terrible final night when Tenochtitlan fell, an omen appeared to the Aztecs, which for them symbolized the breakup of their mythic and cosmological order. That night, it began to rain, but more like a heavy dew than rain. Then suddenly the omen appeared, burning like fire in the sky. It wheeled in spirals like a whirlwind, giving off light in showers of sparks like red-hot embers. It made noises, rumbling and hissing like metal on a fire. It circled the walls near the lake shore. It hovered over the temple, and then it moved out into the middle of the lake, where it vanished. No one cried out when the omen came into view. The people knew what it meant, and they watched in silence. After the conquest of Guatemala, the Spanish built their new capital, Antigua, in the shadow of the ancient sacred volcanoes. It was intended as a showcase of the ideals of European civilization. But the reality behind this humanistic facade was the greatest genocide in history. It's estimated as many as 90% of the native population of the Americas died of disease or violence in the first century of the conquest. As many as 50 million people. Among the Europeans who were horrified by what they saw was José de Acosta. The Spaniards must bear absolute responsibility for what is happening here, he wrote. We have betrayed in our deeds what we professed in our words. We have exploited and plundered these poor people, with no attempt to protect their human rights. We have not given them Christianity in sincerity, but under compulsion, fraud and violence. The papacy itself urged on the enslavement of the natives in the name of Christ. But it was among the Catholic clergy that the European conscience grew. The greatest of these early liberation theologians was Bartolomeo de las Casas, bishop here in Coban. A passionate defender of Indian rights, Las Casas' memory is still revered here. This is one of the few churches in Guatemala where even today the services are sung not in Spanish, but in Maya. Las Casas would take his case right up to the King and Queen of Spain themselves, urging on them justice for the Indians. And gradually he came to realize that his arguments against the enslavement of the Indians applied with equal force to the black slaves from Africa and all the oppressed peoples of the world. There's an extraordinary sequel to this story of Las Casas. An incident which lights up the history of the 16th century like a flash of lightning and continues to illuminate us even today. In 1550, in Valladolid in Spain, there took place a public debate between Las Casas and the top Aristotelian philosopher, Sepulveda. The questions at stake go right to the heart of the world's problems even today. In essence, what right does the first world have to dominate, enslave, or exploit the third world? Are not these people, asked Las Casas, rational, feeling human beings with a soul just like the rest of us, entitled to equality of treatment? And Las Casas goes on to bring fascinating arguments from his study of Greek and Roman civilization to show that the city-states of Central America conformed in most respects to the Greek view of what an ideal state should be. Rational political entities entitled to respect, patience, persuasion, and again, kindness. No doubt Las Casas won the moral debate. But as the whole of subsequent history shows, the rulers of the West, the people with power and money, continue to view the indigenous peoples of the world, from the Indians of Central America to the blacks of Africa, as what the Greeks, to their discredit, had termed natural slaves. The West's progress to civilization has been long and painful. It would be 150 years after the conquest that the last Mayan stronghold fell. In the remote jungles of northern Guatemala stood the island fortress of Flores, in Maya, Tayasal. The prophetic books of the Yucatan Maya foretold that catastrophe would revisit them every cycle of 13 katuns. 256 or 7 years. The next cycle was due to begin in 1697. Armed with that knowledge, the Spanish attacked on the 13th of March. In the middle of Lake Petén, they overcame the Mayan boats. Obsidian-tipped arrows, useless against Spanish armor and musket fire. Amid abandoned war canoes, they landed where only the previous year King Can Ek had greeted a Spanish embassy with flowers and music from drums and flutes. The last chapter in the long and dramatic history of the independent Maya was about to end. The defenders fled, and the Spaniards marched uphill to the top of the island, to the great temple of Tayasal. It took the Spaniards a single day to destroy the 12 temples here on the island, to smash their thousands of idols, and to conclude in the evening by celebrating Mass here on the highest point amid the ruins of the great Temple of Tayasal, where the church now stands. The last independent kingdom of the Maya had gone down. The locals here seem to have accepted this almost fatalistically as an inescapable result of their view of the repeating cycles of time. For 3 times since the 10th century, the cycle of 256 or 7 years had brought them catastrophe. That, in Maya eyes, was the true burden of time. Today, the old cant still continues. The greatest catastrophe of modern Guatemalan history, the US-backed coup which overthrew their democracy in 1954, happened exactly 257 years after the fall of Tayasal. Today, the Maya, the majority of the population, still live dominated by a European elite. The recent guerrilla war left 40,000 dead and 1 million displaced. It is hoped that in the 1990s, with a new democracy, their history will take a different course. The Mayan strategy for survival remains stubbornly collective. In great festivals like this at Zunil, they celebrate the saints as guardians of the community, not as Christian deities. For them, identity still resides in the collective values represented by ancestors and community. The European elites who have ruled Central America for so long had other views of past and future. One of Guatemala's modern dictators, Estrada Cabrera, expressed his faith in the values of European civilization by constructing concrete Parthenons all over the land, monuments to colonial progress, to the triumph of Greeks over barbarians. In the capital, Guatemala City, as all over Central America, the native culture has been swamped by the consumer values of the great neighbor to the north, Uncle Sam. In the city, the Indians are submerged, strangers in their own land. Widows of the Civil War, begging in the shadows.